Ashes of Cinnabar. Chapter 1. The Boy with Two Names. The winter wind of Zhao slid like a thin knife through the reed beds. Frost webbed each blade. Crows hopped on the city wall like black punctuation marks. On the road below, a boy in a straw cape walked with a scholar's slowness, the way literati pace when they recite lines for the dead. His name in the capital records was Xu Ming, an apprentice copyist from Handan, bearer of brush and inkstone. His other name, stitched invisibly to the lining of his heart, was Sable. When the bamboo house spoke into his ear through a silk screen, he answered to Sable. "Repeat," the silk had whispered 3 nights ago. "Target." "General Bai Chen," Sable replied, barely breathing. "Once of Wei, now sells his sword to Qin, called the Immortal." "Why?" "Because he will not die." "Closer." A pause, a soft scrape of lacquer. "Why do we care?" "Because Wei's northern passes are bargained in his tent, and Qin's chariots move where he points. Because if he is immortal, the balance among the states breaks like thin ice. And if he is not, then someone is lying with a very expensive voice." Sable bowed to the screen he could not see through. "I will go to the camp at Julu and listen to his lies." Now he walked into a countryside that smelled of cold wheat and wood smoke. The sky was a lacquer bowl with a cracking rim. He kept his hands visible and his eyes humble, a harmless boy with a satchel. In his mind he rehearsed the posture of a servant, the angle of a bow, the weight of 10 different dialects. A fox crossed the road ahead, stopped, and looked back at him. Sable stopped too. The wind turned. Somewhere far away drums lifted, thudding the breath of armies into the ribs of the plain. "War season," Sable murmured to the fox. "When the earth drinks too much." The fox twitched an ear, contempt or sympathy, who could tell, and slipped into reeds. Chapter 2. Camp of Iron and Smoke. The Qin encampment near Julu was a city that did not care to live long. Avenues of stakes and pikes, tents dark as old bruises, cook fires stippling the dusk. Men swarmed like ants, their helmets horned with frost. Banners snapped, each character a scar. At the outer checkpoint, Sable lowered his gaze and lifted his satchel. "Ink for the quartermaster," he said, offering the wood strip that named him clerk for hire. The guard examined the seal. Genuine, purchased with coin and a stolen hour under a sleeping scribe's nose. "Third row, black tent," the guard grunted. "Don't get in the way. These men sharpen more than spears." Sable bowed. He walked, counting steps, angles, shadows. He smelled boiled millet, horse piss, the resinous sweetness of pitch. Now and then the wind carried something stranger, a mineral tang, like wet stones struck with iron. He found the black tent, its cords tight as a harp. Inside, a broad-shouldered man with a tortoiseshell tally worked by lamplight. Quartermaster Su. Sable bowed deep, unpacked brushes, unstoppered ink, and fell into the modest miracle of copying. He was fast and exact. Numbers behaved for him. After an hour of obedient silence, he ventured, "Who commands here, elder?" "General Bai Chen," Su said without looking up. "People say he is." Sable let the word hang like the last drop under a ladle. "Older than dust? Harder than bronze?" Su's mouth crooked. "It is said he was already a captain when Jean still wore a single name. Then he has seen many winters. Or only one that refuses to end," Su muttered. His brush paused. "You didn't hear that here." "I hear nothing," Sable said politely. "Good." Su leaned closer. "Because some who hear too much are sent to the White Pavilion and come back quiet." Sable tilted his head as if not fully understanding. "White Pavilion? An alchemist's tent," Su said. "Priests of fumes and powders. They bake the general's medicines there, and the night glows with their sins." Sable's skin tightened. "If I may fetch for you, elder. You may fetch your supper and not trip over your feet. Work at dawn." Su waved him off. "And keep your nose out of places that smell like heaven on fire." Sable returned to the wind and the myriad small hungers of a camp. He ate millet cake in the lee of a cart and watched the sky sharpen into stars. Beyond the ranked tents, A strange pallor pulsed, as if the moon had crouched to warm its hands. "The white pavilion," he breathed. Chapter 3: The Alchemist's Breath. He waited until the hour when sentries yawn and the moon grows careless. Then Sable wrapped his satchel in his straw cape and walked like smoke. The white pavilion stood apart, roped around with taboos. Strips of silk knotted with charms, gourds hanging by twine, patterns of salt on trampled ground. The canvas itself was pale as bone. Thin light bled from the seams. A smell threaded the air, sweet metallic, like tears spilled on a new coin. A figure emerged, swaying slightly, bearing a brazier. The glow painted his narrow face like a fox mask. Master Zhen, Sable guest, Bai Chen's alchemist, student of Cinnabar and dreams. Sable bowed, letting his breath white the cold. "Teacher, a message from Quartermaster Su." The fox face dipped, impatient. "Give it." Sable presented a scrap of wood with a scribble he knew Zhen could not read. Alchemists often despised the horizontal labor of script. Zhen squinted, frowned, and then waved Sable toward the tense edge while he squatted to warm his hands. In through the light's seam, under the flap, silent. Sable slid like a thought someone denies having. Inside, a low altar with copper bowls, shelves of vials stoppered in beeswax, bowls of red powder that might have been crushed sunsets, a long table where a coil of tubing ran from a clay retort to a porcelain cup. In the corner, under a screen painted with cranes, a sleeping couch with dark blankets and a folded fur cloak whose pattern was the sky before snow. On a stand beside it, a helmet worked with a tiger mask. Sable's throat tightened. He faced the couch, the retort, the cup like the answer to a riddle. Mercury droplet trembled in the cup, catching the lamp as if swallowing stars. Footsteps, a different weight, heavier, measured. Sable slid behind the screen, the painted cranes suddenly allies. The tent flap lifted. General Bai Chen entered. He moved with the economy of someone who had worn armor longer than other men wore hair. His face was a geography of old campaigns, the lines cut deep and clean. The eyes were not young, but they were not tired either. They were knives that had learned to wait. "Zhen," he said, voice low, "is it ready?" The alchemist shuffled in behind him, bowed until his cue brushed the ground. "The elixir is perfected, General." Cinnabar distilled thrice, portended with the gentlest breath, and the spirit gate opened with the dragon's salt. "Tonight you drink it with lacquer of gold. Your marrow will sing." Bai Chen did not smile. "My marrow has enough songs, but I will not be unready for spring." He removed the tiger helm, set it on the stand, and sat on the couch. He unhooked his bracers. His hands were scarred, but the scars were old. No fresh cut marred them. Zhen lifted the cup. The quicksilver sloshed, made a meniscus like the lip of a world. He offered it with both hands. "Drink," he breathed, "and time will forget your name." "Time forgets every name," Bai Chen said, but he drank. Sable pressed tongue to his palate to keep from gasping. The general swallowed as if the liquid were ordinary broth. His chest rose, fell. He exhaled steam. Zhen watched with the hungry pity of a priest who believes both in the right and its price. "Leave me," Bai Chen said. "Your vapors make my dreams too crowded." Zhen bowed himself out. The general lay back, his eyes shut. His breath slowed, became the measured bellows of a smithy that never cools. Sable stayed behind the painted cranes until his legs ached. When the lamp guttered and the white pavilion slept the way a forest sleeps, full of eyes, he slid out the back seam and into the cold again. Mercury, he thought. Cinnabar to mercury, mercury to myth. The immortal's marrow sings because it is being slowly replaced by metal. He tasted terror like a coin under his tongue. Chapter 4: River with Teeth. The bamboo house taught Sable many ways to carry news. Tonight he chose the river. He walked to the bank where the zhang slid like black silk and found a fisherman he had been told to find. Old Crane, who knew how to read more than currents. Crane's face was a map of winters. He accepted Sable's coin with a grunt and rowed without chatter to the reed-sheltered bend where eyes grow lazy. There Sable tied his report to a hollow gourd and sent it downriver like a bottled ghost. Trouble, Old Crane said, as if asking whether the wind intended to stiffen. Trouble that wears a general's cloak, Sable said, and drinks stones. Crane spat into the river. Kings brew miracles because they're afraid of coffins. Me, I'd like my grandson to have one good spring. Sable watched the gourd whirl in the eddy and vanish into the black. If this reaches the bamboo house, they will say kill him. Who? The immortal. Crane shrugged. Everything dies. The river is patient. He sculled back through the reeds. Frost crackled along the stems like little bones. When Sable stepped ashore, the reeds parted on the other side. A small woman in a dark coat watched him with an expression that would have been gentleness if it hadn't also been a threat. You throw bottles into my river, she said. And you think the fish are illiterate? He bowed. Lady, I am only a clerk. She stepped closer. The moon caught the scar on her cheek. A thin crescent like a fingernail pressed too hard. I am Lan, hand to General Bai Chen. I am also very patient with liars. Come. There are times when flight is stupid and fight is suicide. Sable went. Chapter 5 The Immortal Speaks. The general's tent did not need to be large. It needed to be arranged like an argument that compels assent. Maps along the walls, tall lamp, tiger mask watching, a bronze mirror that remembered other faces. Bai Chen stood by the table, hands clasped behind him. The mercury smell had faded. The man smelled of leather and pine ash. You are too clever for a copyist, he said without turning, and too careful for a thief. I can be stupid and clumsy on command, Sable offered. Do not, Lan said from behind him. Bai Chen turned. His eyes measured Sable as a butcher measures a carcass. How many pieces? What weight? Your name? Shu Ming. Your other name? Sable held his breath a heartbeat too long. Lan saw you at the river, Bai Chen said mildly. When I recruit wolves, I prefer them house-trained. I am no wolf, Sable said. I carry brushes, not teeth. Bai Chen's mouth quirked. So you saw the alchemist's work. He tapped the map. What did you think? I thought, Sable said, hearing his voice from far away, that immortality is a slow drowning in silver. Lan's breath caught. Bai Chen's face did not alter, but something in the air did, like metal cooling. Few men see clearly at 18, he said. You must be 19. 17. Sable lied automatically. Bai Chen ignored it. I am called immortal because soldiers need stories when they are asked to die. I drink the elixir because kings want me alive until their borders are arranged into poems they like. I do not drink for myself. He lifted one hand. The lamplight made a tiny sun in his palm. When a king says, live forever and win me the passes, he means, die later and kill me a road. So I choose later. You choose to poison yourself so that others can poison a map, Sable said, unable to stop. Maps are always poisoned, Bai Chen said. The first man to draw a line invented betrayal. He stepped closer. What does your house want, boy? A dagger in my ribs? A cup of antidote in my hand? A rumor, that sweetest of blades. Truth, Sable said before he could swallow it. Or barring that, balance. A long quiet. Then, to Sable's bewilderment, Bai Chen laughed. A dry sound, but not cruel. Balance, he said. There speaks a spy without a king yet. Good. He glanced at Lan. Take him, feed him, put him where ink runs. Let us see what he writes when no one reads. Lan touched Sable's shoulder. Do not run, she murmured. The camp eats runners as a treat. Chapter 6 Worms of Fire. War unfurled with the fatal grace of a dancer who knows her steps end at a cliff. Qin's chariots moved. Wei's scouts vanished. Zhao's banners gathered like thunderheads. In between, the fields continued their patient arithmetic. Seed plus season equals food, unless chariot. Sable found himself assigned to the signal corps, where brush strokes meant arrows and candles meant cavalry. He learned the pulse of command voice, the cadence of messengers. He sent lies and truths with equal hand. At night, he paid attention to where Lan went. She moved like a shadow that had negotiated an excellent contract with the light. When she entered the white pavilion, she always came out slower. One evening inside the signal tent, Sable bent over a dispatch and felt, not for the first time, pain behind his eyes, a metallic tiredness. He blinked. The ink shone oddly, like oil on water. "You smell it?" said a voice at his elbow. A thin man with a bent nose grinned without humor. "They call me Tao for no good reason. The alchemist's fumes go everywhere. The general drinks. We breathe." Sable rubbed his temple. "Poisoned parchment. Poisoned air," Tao said. "But do not worry. Only those who need lungs will suffer." Sable half smiled, and Tao liked him for it. "You are too young for this camp," Tao added. "Nobody is the right age for this camp," Sable said. Tao's grin deepened. "Perhaps you will live." Sable lived. Others did not. The first skirmish broke 3 days later on the wheat stubble west of Julu. A bright, stupid hour where men discovered whether their arms remembered training or panic. Sable watched from a hill with the signal flags. Below, horses screamed the way flutes do when a child plays too hard. The sky was a clear and useless blue. Bai Chen rode at the center, tiger mask down. He moved like a problem solved. Where he pointed, Qin surged. Where he wheeled, Wei broke. At one moment, a chariot axled too deep in a rut. Bai Chen dismounted and lifted the wheel with one arm while 3 men shoved. The chariot leapt forward like a fish, and the men who saw it believed again in stories. Wei withdrew at dusk. The field smoked, then steamed, then went quiet. Sable watched Bai Chen return. The general took off the mask, closed his eyes as if paying a tax, and walked very straight to the white pavilion. Sable followed as far as he dared, and then further. Inside, Zhen's retort sang quietly. Bai Chen sat, sleeves rolled, the mercury cup in his hand. "Tell me," he said, not turning. Sable froze. The general's voice was not loud, but it was the voice that decisions make for themselves. "Are you here to end me?" Sable steadied his breath. "If I say yes, will you call guards?" "No," Bai Chen said. "I will ask you to be quick." Sable's hand went to the knife at his belt. A scribe's knife, meant for cutting bamboo slips. It would go through skin. Then what? He thought of the men who believed in the story of the immortal. He thought of the boys who would die when the story changed. "Not tonight," he said, and hated himself for the relief that flooded him. Bai Chen nodded. "Good. Then listen. If I fall in battle, it is luck season. If I die in tent, it is politics' turn. But if I die by a young hand that pretends to serve the people while serving a faction, then the war will last longer and the graves will be shallow. Do you understand?" Sable's throat hurt. "You think I serve no one. I think you serve the future," Bai Chen said. "It eats faster than kings. Help me shorten its meal." "How?" "Find the worm in my camp." Sable stared. "Lan." Bai Chen snorted softly. "If Lan wished me dead, I would be a story already. No, the worm is a friend with clean hands. Someone feeds Jin salt that isn't salt, fire that burns too cold, smoke that sings too sweet. Someone wants my elixir stronger." "Stronger?" Bai Chen looked finally, and his eyes were old in a way that made Sable ashamed. "There are 2 roads," he said. "One is long, with milestones of ache. The other is short, paved with glory. Jin thinks he can cut the road at a clever angle." "And you?" "I know roads," Bai Chen said. "They always collect tolls." Chapter 7, A Furnace of Snow. Sable watched and courted the habit of being overlooked. He brought Jin clean water. He fetched charcoal. He swept outward spirals of salt with a goose feather. He coughed like any other clerk in the white pavilion's weather. He learned to see mercury like a living thing. He learned that Cinnabar shivers like crushed pomegranate flesh before it submits to flame. He learned that some smoke smells sweet as a palace lie, some acrid as a widow's truth. One night he saw Tao enter by the back slit. Tao with his bent nose and easy grin. Jin looked up, annoyed, then pleased. "You have it." Tao produced a small porcelain jar. "From the eastern kiln. The gold workers call it dragon fat. Zhen's face tilted with desire. He unstoppered, sniffed. A look of reverence, or the mimicry of it, passed over him. "The balance turns," he whispered. "General will leap." Tao's grin did not reach his eyes. "Leap where?" Zhen did not answer. He tipped the jar into the retort. Sable stepped backward, pulse in his hands. Dragon fat. A euphemism for something worse than mercury. An alloyed extract the bamboo house had warned of in half-words. Powders that teach the blood to forget being blood. The retort song changed. The tube trembled. The pale liquid in the cup thickened to a shimmer that made the light bend. Sable heard a footfall and turned to see Lan. Silent as a vow, eyes on the cup. She lifted her gaze to Sable, then to Tao. "Tao," she said conversationally. "Remind me how many kings you have served." Tao's grin firmed. "I serve cooks. Whoever pays feeds me." "And who pays for this?" Lan asked. Tao shrugged. "The future, perhaps. The one with a Qin stamp." "Then the future bought a cheap dish," Lan said, and moved. It was not a long fight, but it was quick enough to produce a confusion of images Sable would later remember out of order. Lan's sleeve opening like a hawk's wing. A knife that looked embarrassed at the things it had to do. Zhen's gasp when Tao's hand pushed his head into the retort as if baptizing him in a bad religion. Steam whistling a single note of surprise. Sable's scribe knife pale as a moth's belly. Tao's laugh cutting off, the cup cracking with a spiderweb line that made the mercury. Sigh. When the tent stopped echoing, Tao lay with his head at an angle that made grammar meaningless. Zhen sat on the floor weeping, his hair smoking slightly, face mottled with tiny burns. Lan wiped her blade on Tao's sleeve and looked at Sable. "Can you breathe?" "Yes," Sable said, and discovered he had been holding his breath for the length of a sonnet. "Good," she said. "Now help me. We must pour that back into the night." They lifted the retort with cloth and gloves and carried it outside, away from the charms, into a patch of ground that had accepted worse. The steam roiled, white and sticky, and the stars recoiled. They poured slowly, speaking no words, because some vapors understand grammar and obey it. When they returned, the general stood in the doorway, tiger mask under his arm. "I heard the part where silence broke," he said. "Did we win?" "No one wins," Lan said. "Tao lost. Zhen lost something. The rest of us stand." Bai Chen nodded. He looked at Sable. "Thank you for not choosing the short road tonight." Sable met his gaze. "I don't know which road I'm on." "No one does," Bai Chen said. "The trick is to walk as if your feet are being read." Chapter 8, The Last Elixir. The next day dawned like a bruise. Mist lay in the hollows. Men moved around their tasks as if the air were thicker. Zhen did not come to the pavilion. A runner found him in his bedroll, breathing shallow, eyes open and offended at the light. Bai Chen visited, Lan by his side, Sable at the lintel like a phrase that might be useful later. The alchemist's voice was a rasp. "I am done, General. Forgive. I wanted to wrap you in fire. I forgot that fire is a poor tailor." "Rest," Bai Chen said. "Take the last I brewed. It is not corrupted." Zhen's hand fluttered. "But do not drink the gold. The dragon, I see it in my dreams. It walks like a man and eats names." Bai Chen's mouth twitched at the corner. "I will regulate my diet." "You will die," Zhen said, tears sliding. "Not today, perhaps, but sooner than my arrogance wanted." "Everyone dies," Bai Chen said. "But some die after making room." He left Zhen to Lan's cool cloths and went to the pavilion. He sat in the dawnlight, took the cup gently, and stared at his reflection in the pale metal. Sable stood at the edge, aching to say 1,000 things that all reduced to one. "General!" Bai Chen raised a hand. Sable stopped. The general lifted the cup, then paused. He turned it and poured half on the ground, where it pooled like the moon had melted. He drank the rest. Lan's eyes flicked to Sable. Sable felt something unclench in his chest and then realized it had been part of him all along. "Signal," Bai Chen said, standing. "We move at dusk. Wei has bled enough to be unwise." Chapter 9, A Field Without Shadows. The last battle did not feel like a last anything. The sky was ordinary. The ground was the usual dirt. Banners did their old tired work of lying cheerfully under arrow holes. But there was a smell in the air that makes men restless. Iron and rain and the thought of being remembered. Wei came hard. Qin answered harder. The chariots wove the old lattice of death. Footmen trod on men they had eaten with. Horses fell like doors. Sable ran messages until his lungs were lathes. He watched Han formations, blocks of men, move like calligraphy strokes on a scroll too wet with ink. He saw Bai Chen 3 times. Once cutting a path through a knot of halberds. Once hauling a fallen standard upright with a gesture that said try again. Once stopped, just for a breath, looking north as if listening to an argument only he could hear. By late afternoon, the light tilted. Wei's right broke. Their center swayed. Qin pressed. Bai Chen pointed, and the press turned into a door. Through it Qin walked. And then something small and stupid happened, the kind of trivial hinge history loves. A chariot will hit a buried stake. The axle leapt and barked the general's shin. He staggered, nothing more. But the men who loved the story caught their breath. The immortal, stumbling. Bai Chen did not fall. He grinned a little as if hearing the joke first. He surged forward and took the last bend of the field with the inevitability of water that has found its slope. Wei ran. Qin did not pursue far. Bai Chen called them back with a raised palm. "Let them carry the tale," he said into the wind. "It does our work for us." The field exhaled. The light went kinder. Lon found Sable with blood that was not his on his sleeve and wiped it with a tenderness so brisk it felt like discipline. "You did not die," she said. "I filed the paperwork to delay it," Sable said. "Approved," she said. Bai Chen walked alone to the river's edge. Sable followed, unwilling to let solitude accumulate around the general like frost. The immortal stood with his hands on his hips, looking at the water. He spoke without turning. "Tell your house. The man they call immortal has decided to remain mortal." Sable swallowed. "You poured half. I will pour the other half next time," Bai Chen said. "We will see how swift the gods are to close accounts." "You will die?" "Yes." "Not today." Bai Chen turned. For the first time Sable saw not a map line but a human line. Not a bronze mask but a man's face, set toward a road that went down into ordinary earth. "I will not be the long winter that kills your springs," Bai Chen said softly. "Let kings find other stories." Sable realized then that he loved him, not as a boy loves a father he never had, but as a spy loves a secret that decides, against prudence, to speak truly. He bowed deeply and meant it. Chapter 10: Crows and Plum Blossoms. The bamboo house received Sable's report and closed its many eyes for a long blink. Some eyes were satisfied. Some wanted sharper knives. The house sent back 3 words by gourd and river: watch, right, wait. The war did not end because wars enjoy their work, but for a season it slowed. Bai Chen moved like a man who suspected he might have time to teach his sword to be a plow. He ordered granaries tall as pride. He forbade raids during planting. He sent Lon to hang chains of plum blossoms over the white pavilion's door. Zhen recovered slowly and learned to brew medicines that healed as well as harmed. Tao's body was burned with the anonymity he had earned. The smoke rose like a question and did not come down. Sable stayed, not trapped, not free, because his report still had a blank space where an ending should go. He copied maps. He sent lies over ridges. He ate millet with men who woke and slept to drums. He grew older in the way a whetstone does. In late spring, the plum tree outside the pavilion burst into a ridiculous abundance. In the tent, Bai Chen sat with Sable and Lon and Zhen around a low table. The general's hair had gone more salt than iron. His hands shook a little sometimes when he reached for the cup. "Do you miss it?" Sable asked. "The taste? The numbness? The lie?" Bai Chen smiled. "I miss the excuse." Lon sipped tea. He misses being the story men tell instead of the man who must sit to tie his sandals. "The story served its time," Bai Chen said. "Now the man will try." Zhen looked at his fingers. "I was a bad priest," he said suddenly. "I worshipped fire because it obeyed me. When it did not, I blamed the offering. I am sorry. Bai Chen touched his arm. You are a man. That is enough penance to last a life. Sable felt something loosen in the world and settle again, as if a sail had learned the wind's weight. He excused himself and stepped outside, where the plum blossoms fell in fat, absurd snow. The crows on the wall were back, counting the days with their abrupt voices. The river wrote the same sentence it always wrote, and somehow it read differently. He thought of all he had seen. Intrigue braided through kindness like wire and rope. Alchemy that healed and hurt. Battles that were just loud versions of the quiet decisions people make when no drums pound. Nature that did not care but sometimes seemed to forgive. He thought of the boy named Sable, who had walked into the camp with 2 names and now had too many to count. Clerk, spy, liar, witness, friend. When he turned back, he saw Bai Chen at the doorway, hand on the lintel, looking at the blossoms as if they were something he had forgotten to learn. General, Sable said softly, when you die, many years from now, let's say, how would you like to be remembered? Bai Chen considered, then shrugged almost boyishly. As a man who once chose the longer road, he said, and managed not to get entirely lost. Sable bowed again. I will write it that way. Good, Bai Chen said. Then perhaps your house will learn to read. They stood, 3 figures under falling white. The immortal who had chosen to be mortal, the shadow who had chosen to come into the light, and the woman who would always cut the road to the correct size. Crows argued. The river applauded. The blossoms kept falling as if time had decided, for a polite interval, to stop counting. Moral. Power without principle is a blade that cannot be sheathed. Principle without power is a poem that cannot be heard. In a world where kings seek elixirs and generals seek legends, the hardest alchemy is to transmute fear into restraint, ambition into duty, and secrecy into truth. Choose the longer road when the shorter one demands someone else's blood as toll. Note on history and invention. This story is partly fictional, partly grounded in the era of the warring states, 5th to 3rd centuries BCE, the political fracturing of Qin, Zhao, Wei, Han, Chu, Qi, and Yan, the use of chariots and dagger axes, the bureaucratic innovations of tally sticks and wood strip records, and the alchemy of cinnabar, mercuric sulfide, distilled into mercury, all are drawn from real practices and beliefs of the time. The motif of immortality elixirs reflects historical quests by nobles and later emperors for longevity through alchemical means, with tragic consequences from mercury poisoning. The characters here, Sable, Bai Chen, Lan, Zhan, are invented, as are specific battles and intrigues, but they move through a world shaped by real customs, landscapes, and technologies. The aim of this tale is not to deliver a textbook, but to offer a dark, tragic journey through a plausible warring state setting. A place where ink and iron weighed lives, where intrigue and alchemy braided, and where a young spy and a so-called immortal general tested the line between myth and human choice. May it carry you a while along the longer road.